Wars are supposed to start over land, power, or politics, not breakfast food and pig ears. 1. The War of the Stray Dog, 1925. You know a conflict's off to a great start when it begins with a dog chasing a butterfly. In 1925, a Greek soldier's dog ran across the border into Bulgaria. The soldier, being a loyal owner but a terrible strategist, followed it, armed. Bulgarian troops shot him, and Greece, in full "don't mess with my beagle" mode, invaded. Thousands of troops, tanks, and artillery mobilized, all because of a runaway mutt. The League of Nations had to step in and tell both sides to sit down and stop barking. The final casualty report? A few dozen soldiers, one very confused dog, and a global reminder that pet ownership shouldn't require a ceasefire agreement. 2. The Pastry War, 1838. France once went to war with Mexico over a cake. A French baker in Mexico City claimed that a drunken mob of Mexican officers trashed his pastry shop. When the Mexican government refused to pay for the damages, equivalent to about $600,000 today, France blockaded Mexican ports and demanded justice for the croissants. The standoff escalated into actual combat, because apparently nothing says defending national honor like cannon fire over eclairs. In the end, Mexico paid the baker, France went home, and the world learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a Frenchman's commitment to dessert. 3. The Pig War, 1859. It started with bacon and ended with international diplomacy. On the border of what's now Washington State, an American farmer shot a British pig that was rooting around in his potato patch. That pig happened to belong to a man working for the Hudson's Bay Company. So naturally, both nations brought in troops. For weeks, British warships and American soldiers faced each other over the body of one unlucky pig. The standoff got so tense that one U.S. officer reportedly said, "We'll make a Bunker Hill out of this." Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. The only casualty? The pig. Cause of death: excessive nationalism. 4. The War of Jenkins' Ear, 1739. Nothing quite says casus belli like a severed body part. In 1731, British Captain Robert Jenkins claimed a Spanish Coast Guard officer sliced off his ear during a smuggling inspection. 8 years later, Jenkins showed up before Parliament, still waving the dried ear in a jar, like a pirate-themed prop from CSI Empire Edition. The story enraged Britain enough to declare war on Spain. Years of brutal naval combat followed, all because one guy couldn't keep his head, or rather ear, in the game. Historians still debate the real trigger. But let's be honest, the war of global trade tensions doesn't look nearly as good on a t-shirt. 5. The Emu War, 1932. Imagine losing a war to a bird. Now, imagine losing badly. In 1932, Australia declared war on emus, giant, flightless birds who were destroying wheat fields. These odds, government sent soldiers armed with machine guns to handle it. You'd think 10,000 bullets could solve the problem, but the emus had other plans. They split into smaller groups, ran faster than jeeps, and basically invented guerrilla warfare. After weeks of failure and national embarrassment, the army retreated. The emus won. No peace treaty was ever signed, meaning, technically, the birds are still undefeated. Nature: 1. Humanity: 0. 6. The Bucket War, 1325. Few medieval wars began with such spectacular pettiness. The city-states of Modena and Bologna, rivals in northern Italy, went to war after Modenese soldiers stole a wooden bucket from a Bolognese well. Yes, a bucket. The insult was apparently so severe that thousands of men died in the ensuing battles. Modena kept the bucket as a trophy, displayed proudly in their city hall, where it still sits today. Historians call it the War of the Oaken Bucket. Somewhere out there, a museum curator is still polishing the world's most expensive piece of plumbing equipment. 7. The Football War, 1969. In the summer of 1969, El Salvador and Honduras turned a World Cup qualifier into a literal war. Political tension, immigration disputes, and bad refereeing collided when the fans started rioting. Within days, both countries launched airstrikes. They called it the Football War, or as FIFA probably prefers to remember it, the most violent extra time in history. The conflict lasted 100 hours, killed thousands, and accomplished absolutely nothing, except proving that when people say football is life, sometimes they really mean it. 8. The War of the Golden Stool, 1900. When the British Empire tried to colonize the Ashanti Kingdom in modern-day Ghana, they made a fatal cultural mistake. The British governor demanded to sit on the Ashanti's golden stool, a sacred throne symbolizing their nation's soul. To the Ashanti, that was like asking to borrow someone's god for a photo op. They immediately declared war. The British, expecting a quick victory, instead faced fierce resistance from warriors defending not territory, but dignity. The stool was never surrendered. The Ashanti maintained their pride, and somewhere in London, a bureaucrat probably learned that not everything golden belongs in the British Museum. 9. The War of the Whiskers on 1324, medieval Europe, a place where men in armor would slaughter each other over facial hair. The Duchy of Luxembourg and the County of Holland nearly came to blows when a nobleman mocked another's beard as unfashionably thin. What began as a petty insult escalated when both sides' followers started shaving or not shaving in protest. Within weeks, thousands of soldiers were preparing for battle over grooming choices. The war was averted only when both rulers agreed to a diplomatic compromise. Everyone would grow mustaches until Christmas. Historians now call it the closest shave in history. 10. The War of the Oysters, 1830. Picture this: French fishermen, English fishermen, and an entire bay full of oysters caught in the middle of a seafood turf war. In 1830, British fishermen from Jersey were accused of poaching in French waters. The French Navy sent ships, the British sent bigger ships, and for a few tense days, the world nearly witnessed a full-scale maritime battle over mollusks. Fortunately, diplomats intervened before anyone got shelled, pun intended. In the end, both nations agreed to shared access. The oysters, meanwhile, continued their silent reign of terror as the only species to survive both sides' stupidity. 11. The Toledo War, 1835. Ohio and Michigan once almost went to war over a swamp. The two states both claimed a thin strip of land known as the Toledo Strip, basically a mosquito-infested marsh that wasn't worth a single mosquito bite. Armed militias gathered, threats were made, and one man got stabbed with a penknife. That was the only casualty. Congress eventually stepped in, gave Toledo to Ohio, and handed Michigan the Upper Peninsula as a consolation prize. Michigan ended up with copper, forests, and lakes. Ohio got a swamp and a city that smells like diesel. Congratulations, Ohio. Enjoy your victory. 12. The War of the Stray Goat, 1886. In the Balkans, where borders have never been known for stability, one goat managed to make things worse. A Montenegrin farmer's goat wandered into Ottoman territory and was shot by border guards. The farmer complained to local authorities, who demanded compensation. The Ottomans refused. Within days, gunfire erupted along the frontier. Entire villages mobilized over one dead goat. When diplomats finally restored peace, the Montenegrins celebrated with a feast, using goat meat. Not the same one, of course, but symbolically close enough. Somewhere in the afterlife, that goat's spirit is still bleeding. You're welcome. History. 13. The War of the Pigtails, 1752. If you thought 18th century soldiers were serious professionals, allow me to ruin that image. In 1752, two German principalities went to war because a group of soldiers mocked another regiment's hair ribbons. One officer allegedly said their pigtails looked like those of dancing girls. Insults flew, tempers rose, and within days, cannons were being loaded over hair accessories. The battle lasted less than an afternoon and ended when both sides ran out of gunpowder and dignity. The casualty list included 3 men, 12 horses, and one particularly stylish braid that history never forgot. 14. The War of the Bucket 2.0, 1640. Apparently, Italy didn't learn from its first bucket-related fiasco. 3 centuries after the original oaken bucket conflict, 2 neighboring towns, Imola and Faenza, nearly repeated history. During a local fair, Imola pranksters stole Faenza's ceremonial wine bucket. Faenza, fueled by alcohol and pride, mobilized its militia to reclaim it. The bucket was retrieved after one night of chaos that historians describe as half battle, half bar fight. The aftermath? Broken noses, a few singed vineyards, and one empty bucket. Because someone drank the wine during the retreat. Italy, where even plumbing has national importance. 15. The War of the Chairs, 1410. You wouldn't think seating arrangements could trigger bloodshed, but welcome to medieval diplomacy. At a royal summit in what's now Belgium, the French and the Burgundians argued over who got to sit closest to the host. When servants placed identical chairs at equal distance, both sides accused the other of sabotage. Fists flew, swords followed, and before long the Conference of Peace turned into the Battle of the Upholstery. Several nobles were wounded by flying furniture, and one chronicler solemnly wrote, "It was the most uncomfortable meeting in history." The takeaway? Never underestimate rich men's devotion to personal space. 16. The War of the Mangoes, 1896. In colonial India, British officers and local farmers clashed over mango trees. After a dispute about who owned a particularly fruitful grove, an officer ordered his men to seize the fruit for the crown. The villagers responded with slingshots, machetes, and absolute fury. By the time reinforcements arrived, both sides were pelted with enough mangoes to start a smoothie franchise. The British filed it under native unrest. The locals called it Tuesday. To this day, the region celebrates Mango Day, partly to honor tradition, mostly to remember that no one wins a war fought with tropical fruit. 17. The Nika riots, 532 AD, leave it to the Byzantines to turn sports fandom into civil war. In Constantinople, chariot racing was the Super Bowl of the ancient world, and fans were split into two deadly factions, the Blues and the Greens. After a few arrests, the crowd exploded into a week-long riot that burned half the city. Emperor Justinian nearly fled until his wife, Theodora, reminded him that dying was less embarrassing than running away. He stayed, ordered the army in, and 30,000 fans were slaughtered in the stands. The moral: if you think soccer hooligans are bad, try ancient Greeks with swords. 18. The War of the Rooster, 1350. France again, because of course it's France. In 1350, two lords from neighboring estates began feuding after one of their prized fighting roosters flew over the fence and defected. When the bird refused to return, accusations of theft and witchcraft filled the air. Both lords raised armies to reclaim their property. The resulting battle destroyed 3 villages and ended when the rooster, still alive, was captured by neither side and eaten by peasants. Chronicles describe it as a tragic loss of life and also of lunch. Truly, history's dumbest cockfight. 19. The War of the Wooden Leg, 1839. When your prosthetic limb becomes a national treasure, you know things have gone off the rails. During the Pastry War, yes, that cake war from earlier, Mexican General Antonio López de Santa Anna lost his wooden leg while retreating from French troops. Years later, during the Mexican-American War, Illinois soldiers captured that same leg and proudly paraded it as a war trophy. Mexico demanded it back. The U.S. refused. To this day, the leg sits in a museum in Illinois, proving that the only thing harder than losing a limb is getting it back from Americans with display cases. 20. The War of the Clouds, 1887, Weather Modification, 19th century edition. Two rival rainmaking companies in Texas both claimed they could make it rain using patented atmospheric cannons. When a drought hit, local farmers hired both. The skies stayed bone dry, but the competitors accused each other of stealing the wind. Before long, they were literally shooting at each other's machines. A dozen cannons destroyed, 3 barns blown up, and 0 drops of rain. Eventually, the sheriff declared a ceasefire, calling it the dumbest storm I ever saw. The clouds remained neutral, probably out of embarrassment. 21. The War of the Candy, 1923. In the early 1920s, rival candy companies in Chicago turned industrial competition into a literal street war. After one company released a knockoff chocolate bar, the other retaliated by hiring armed guards to protect its delivery trucks. Then came sabotage, sugar heists, and what newspapers called the sweetest war in America. One executive even tried to poison a rival's caramel vats with salt. The police stepped in only when a full brawl broke out at a confectionery convention. The result? Half the city smelled like cocoa and regret. Willy Wonka would have called it a business seminar. 22. The War of the Kettles, 1788. Some revolutions start with ideals. This one started with cookware. In Denmark, during a period of steep taxes, citizens were furious that the government had imposed levies on household metal goods, including kettles. The riots began when one woman refused to pay for her teapot and smashed it in the street as protest. Within hours, thousands joined her, armed with frying pans and spoons. The army opened fire, the people fought back, and historians now describe it as the only uprising in history fueled entirely by kitchenware. The monarchy survived. The kettles did not. 23. The War of the Flagpole, 1938. In a remote Canadian town, 2 schools shared a single flagpole. One morning, the principal from the Catholic school raised the Union Jack. By lunchtime, the Protestant school lowered it and raised their own. Within days, the town split into rival camps, children included. Fistfights, rock throwing, and a full-on tug-of-war erupted in the schoolyard. The government had to send troops to separate them. The final resolution? 2 flagpoles, one for each faith. The moral? Never underestimate the chaos that can come from too much patriotism and not enough playground supervision. 24. The War of the Mustard. 1926. France again, because it's never not France. Dijon and Paris entered a bitter culinary rivalry when the capital tried to trademark Dijon mustard for mass production. The people of Dijon were outraged that Paris wanted credit for their only export besides wine hangovers. So they launched a propaganda campaign declaring Parisian mustard an abomination. Protests turned violent when a group of Dijon locals pelted a train carrying Parisian mustard with jars of the real stuff. No one was hurt, but dozens were covered in spicy dignity. To this day, Dijon still insists the only thing fake in Paris is their mustard and their humility. 25. The War of the Stray Cat, 1884. If dogs can start wars, why not cats? In 1884, a Belgian soldier stationed at the French border accidentally shot a Frenchman's cat that had wandered into his camp. The French demanded compensation, Belgium refused, and the press lost its mind. Within a week, both sides had mobilized troops, while the cat became an international symbol of innocent martyrdom. Luckily, cooler heads prevailed when diplomats agreed to a peaceful solution. Belgium would replace the cat. Not pay for it, replace it with another cat. Somewhere in Europe, there's probably a very confused feline whose existence single-handedly prevented World War0. 26. The War of the Theaters, 1637. London's drama scene has always been intense, but in 1637, it went full Quentin Tarantino. 2 rival theater companies began sabotaging each other's productions, stealing actors, sets, even audience members. The conflict peaked when one troupe staged a parody mocking the other's lead actor, depicting him as a drunk donkey. That actor responded by storming the rival theater mid-show with a sword. The audience thought it was part of the performance until the blood was real. Authorities shut down both theaters for unreasonable dramatics, proving once and for all that Shakespeare wasn't exaggerating when he said, "All the world's a stage, and some people shouldn't be on it." 27. The War of the Cartographers, 1927. In the early 20th century, Poland and Czechoslovakia nearly went to war over a map. Each country accused the other's geographers of mislabeling a border village. The real kicker? The 2 maps were printed by the same German company using different translations. The Czechs mobilized troops, the Poles sent tanks, and one brave translator had to explain that Zawarszy and Zawarszyce were the same place. The entire war was canceled over a spelling mistake. Somewhere in heaven, every high school geography teacher just sighed and whispered, "Told you maps matter." 28. The War of the Stray Bullet, 1870. And now for the grand finale, the only war in history that began by accident, literally. In 1870, during a Prussian military parade near the French border, a soldier's gun accidentally discharged. The bullet hit no one, but the sound spooked a nearby French patrol who thought they were under attack. Shots were fired back, chaos erupted, and within days the incident spiraled into a full diplomatic crisis that helped ignite the Franco-Prussian War. Thousands died, empires fell, and Europe was forever changed, all because one soldier forgot to turn on his safety. Humanity's downfall, ladies and gentlemen, not malice, not greed, just bad trigger discipline. From buckets to baguettes, from goats to golden thrones, we've proved one thing. Humans will fight over absolutely anything. Which of these wars deserves the gold medal for stupidity? You decide below, before someone starts the comment section war of 2025.